Actually, I'll take care of that. Hello, and welcome to Phoenixville Public Library. I'm Mark Pinto, the library's Adult Services Director. And tonight we're pleased to welcome back author Josephine Pasquarello. Her first book, Love and Loyalty, published in 2017, is a memoir telling the colorful story of how her mother raised her family during hard times in 1950s, 60s Philadelphia. Last year, Josephine published her second book, Life's Journey, based on the real-life experiences of her paternal grandmother, an immigrant from Italy who overcame enormous obstacles to settle and begin a new life in South Philadelphia at the turn of the 20th century. It's a fascinating tale told in the first person. So we welcome tonight author Josephine Pasquarello to give us a taste of this story. Please welcome Josephine.
Thank you. Well, for anyone who hasn't read the book, it's Life's Journey. And on the front cover, it'll show you the ship that my grandmother was on. And I have her manifest, a copy of it. And over here, this is the little village that my grandmother lived in called Attendees. And they had a farm. And then, of course, this is City Hall. When she first came across in 1899, that's what she saw when she came through South Philly. Because she came on the ship to Ellis Island. From there, she got the train and came to South Philadelphia on Market Street. And then my grandfather picked her up there. But I'll start from the very, I just wanted to tell you about the cover. I'll start from the very beginning.
Very good place to start. Sorry. Oh, that was bad.
The prologue. The prologue is when she is just then going to turn, in 1894, 13 years old. And she and her sister Christina, her only sister, decided that they would camp outside on the ground. They lived on a farm, and they were talking about what their dreams are. And Gertrude, my grandmother, wanted to be a fashion designer, live in Naples. She didn't want to live on a farm, deal with chickens and dirt and everything. And Christina was happy to stay in Attendees. But then life changes, because that's when she's 14, and now she's just going to turn 18, and she's being told by her father and her mother that she's coming across the ocean because she's going to marry Raphael Pasquarello. And so she's trying to deal with all of that, and she's believing that her older sister Christina should come because she's the oldest, but Gertrude was really pretty, so they thought she'll make it over there and he'll be happy and pleased, because it's a money exchange between the priest here and the priest over there. So she does a solo trip. She gets on that ship, and on her manifest page there's two other people from Attendees, which is an old guy who's 50 and a young boy who's 14. And the old guy is going to go live with his sister in South Philly, and the 14-year-old is going to go live with his sister in South Philadelphia. And they're the only people that she knows on that ship. And she didn't know that till the day she got on the ship. And it gives you a whole outline of what happens on the ship, where you basically don't get washed. And if you do brush your teeth or anything, it's all done with seawater. The food is foul. It's usually kind of almost to the bad point of where it's rotten. And if the females don't stick together, they get taken advantage of. So you have to be really cautious with that. So to get back to what I was talking about, I read in a book that I bought that was about Italians. And so when the ships will come into the harbor in New York City, they would have the New York detectives standing out there watching all the girls coming off, because they just assumed that they all were prostitutes. And as soon as they would catch them, they were going to put them back on the ship and send them back. And another thing that I learned is, you know how a lot of people, their name was chopped, or they took out their veil or whatever, and they assumed that it was the gentleman who took all the information when they came through. Wasn't so. It was originally done in Italy. It's weird, huh? Like my mother's pescatori, that's an I, but whoever heard pescatori said it's an E, so it came out as an E, but it's really an I. But it was all done back in Italy, whatever port you came out of, Naples, Pescara, or whatever. So I'll go back to how she feels about coming over to Philadelphia. She's not very happy about it. She doesn't think that she ever even wants to meet Ralph Pasquarello, let alone marry him, and she surely doesn't want to come to America. She wants to be in a big city in Italy and live the fine life, and not have dirt under her fingernails, killing chickens, cleaning up cow poo. They had goats and stuff like that. She was not into it. So we'll skip over all of that. And now she's on the ship, and she's really disappointed because there's so many people on the ship. And now they have an Italian girl that the ship company hired, and she's going to go through all the questions that they're going to be asked when they pull into Ellis Island. And she was helping them. So that helped her a lot. Plus she met her dear friend Sophia. Sophia was an 18-year-old girl who also was going across solo. Her father wanted her. She was kind of like a bad girl, and her father said the best thing for her is to go over there, get married, and stay over there. So they became really good friends, and she herself was going to South Philadelphia too. So Gertrude had someone on the ship with her. And then they pull in, and she meets him. When they first meet, she's coming off the train, and she's stepping onto the platform, and she sees this small, older Italian man, all dressed in the suit with the white shirt and the hat, walk over to her, and she sees this handsome young guy with him. So she's thinking, oh, it's not the old man. They don't want me to marry the old man. And then Michelle Pasquarello, my great-grandfather, introduces himself, and then says, and this is Raphael. So Raphael puts his hand out to take the suitcase from her, and he accidentally brushes her hand, and she's freaking out because she likes it. She likes what he looks like, and she's really happy. 8 months later, she married Raphael. And then 9 months later, she gave birth to her first baby, and she lived with Michelle, my great-grandfather, great-grandmother, and my grandfather's 2 younger brothers. They all lived there. And she got married at the church, and she had Aunt Rosie in bed in the house, and that's where my grandmother gave birth to all her children, in that bed. And my grandfather originally was a huckster on 9th Street, the Italian market, but then someone offered him a job to be a bartender on Dock Street. So then he became a bartender. And my father was their second child, but the first boy. So my father was taught all those trades of being a huckster. People borrowed money from my grandfather, and my grandfather helped a lot of people. So now everything is starting to be thrown onto my father, because now he needs to learn all of the business. And my father had a wooden cart, used to go up and down the street selling stuff. That's how he got to be a huckster, and eventually my father opened his own store. But to get back to my grandparents and my great-grandparents, my great-grandfather and my great-grandmother died within a couple years of my grandmother getting here. So, and the 2 younger boys ended up getting married. So now my grandparents are in the house, and they lived on Lee Street, which is a street right behind 9th Street, the market. And they went to school, Catholic school, and then my grandparents both become ill, and my father has to take care of everyone, him, his 8 sisters, and his 2 parents who are really ill, and he's now 14 years old. But he's doing it, but he's learning the street, which probably wasn't the best thing for him to learn, because when you learn the street, you go deeper and deeper. You just don't stop at something, oh, well, I can make money doing that, I want to do that, I can do this. So he used to sell liquor when it was Prohibition. Yeah. Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Prohibition. And he did it with his push cart. He had the level of where he sold his liquor, and then they had the top 2 levels where it was the fresh produce, and so that the cops wouldn't know what he was doing. And he used to go to the like clubs, the back door, and sell them everything that they needed. So my father was really kind of making a lot of money. My great-grandfather wasn't doing really bad at all. They owned their house on League Street, had all the kids in school, and they bought land in Willow Grove. They were going to start a farm there, but he died, so they never got the chance to do that. And then the realtor came along and said, well, the land in Willow Grove's not doing so good. It's really going down in value, so, but I can help you. I can buy it from you. So my grandmother fell for that. He ripped her off. And, well, that's what happens when you don't have a man and they're coming after you, you got something good, you know what I mean? Because they probably were thinking, well, what does she know? She doesn't speak English too well. She doesn't know she's from South Philadelphia. This is all the way in Willow Grove, you know what I mean? Then my grandfather got so sick that he ended up in a bed in the living room where, did any of you read the book? I'm going to tell you that. He gave her syphilis. So back in those times, they had no antibiotics. So he ended up in a bed. And they had to take care of him because you become paralyzed, you don't eat, they're changing his diaper all the time. Then they finally put him in Pennsylvania Hospital, and with like a week he passed away. But now we all know that it's going to happen to Grandma. And in between, when she first finds out that she has syphilis and he gave it to her, they didn't have any babies for 3 years. They already had 6. So now 3 years go by and they didn't have any more babies, which you think they wouldn't have anymore, right? That she would have said the door's closed. No. She had 6 more. Yeah, weird, huh? And all of them turned out normal, except for Uncle Rocco was the baby. And Uncle Rocco, and I only found this out, Aunt Myra used to say, Josephine, there's an Uncle Rocco, but we don't know where he is. Nobody knows. So I got this census thing, and on there it was Uncle Rocco. He was born in 1919 in October, and he was still alive at the census of 1920 in January, and then he totally disappears. I can't find a trace of him. We know he died. We figured he probably was the one because she was my grandfather died about a year after he was born, so my grandfather probably was almost gone then, do you know what I mean? Except that his kids and his wife kept him alive by feeding him and changing him and bathing him, do you know what I mean? But whatever happened to Uncle Rocco, we don't know. But none of them ever talked about it until the last Pasquarello was born. Aunt Myra told me about him. She said, check it out, I'm telling you, there's an Uncle Rocco somewhere. But out of all the 12 pregnancies, she gave birth to 10 that lived, and 2, I believe, were stillborn. Back in those days, they used to have a lot of babies, you know what I mean? And I think they had sex all the time. Because how can you be pregnant all the time? You have to have sex.
I think that's how it works.
Thank you. I mean, I used to think about that when I'd be talking to my mom, because my mother had 12. But you can never ask her because she was like a real Catholic. Like, you know, you just don't say those things and ask those questions of your mother. You know what I mean? Hi, Michelle. Hi. This is my niece, Michelle.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Who's he, Michelle?
Hi, Aunt Joe. This is my friend Jen.
Jim?
Hi, you can come in, Jim.
Okay, come in.
We were just talking about sex.
I'm in, let's hear about it. Good timing. Very good.
Michelle is my niece, and she belongs to my sister Grace. In the 12 of us, Grace was number 3.
What number are you?
I'm number 10.
Are you the baby?
No, there's 2 more after me.
12.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. I never wanted to be the baby. Because then
Well, my
you,
grandparents were Italian, and both of them there were 8 kids on both sides. My mother, there were 8, my father, there were 8. They didn't have anything else to do, I guess.
But you got to remember, when they came from Italy, they all had farms and stuff. A lot of them.
And
lived
they
in those
needed those
villages.
kids.
They needed those kids to be turning that dirt and everything else, kill those chickens. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And then we thought that my great aunt Christina, which is my grandmother's sister, who was a year older than Gertrude, we always thought she came over in 1918 and got married to Antonio Pizzichetti, who his wife just died and left him with 3 daughters. But then some woman from a church called me and said, I have information on your Aunt Christina. Can I send it to you? And I went, yeah. Sends it to me, and I opened it up. Aunt Christina came over in 1916 to Chicago and married some Italian guy there on an arranged marriage, and he deserted her.
Oh.
So then she hopped on a train and came to Philadelphia to be with her sister, my grandmother, and married Antonio. They matched it up. So they deserted you when there was nothing you could do about it. Do you know what I mean? So of course she has to marry a man with 3 kids. So when she marries him, she moves into a house in South Philly where there's 12 people living. And I thought to myself, 12, that's a lot. And I think, wait, when I was a kid, there were 14 of us in a little house. So that was no big deal to Aunt Christina. But yeah. So anyway, to get back to Gertrude. Gertrude and my grandfather were really in love. Well, as you could tell, she must have been in love after he did to her what he did to her. And she stayed by his side. She took care of him till he died. And then she became really ill. And Aunt Christina was living in the neighborhood, so she would come over and take care of Gertrude while Gertrude is in bed now. She's dying. And my father is operating all the businesses, keeping it all together. And the siblings, all my aunts and uncles, are starting to get married and have their own families. And that's what happened with all of them. They all went on and did their own thing. But my father, all his brothers and sisters considered him to be the father for them because his father died when they were, I mean, the youngest when he died was 6 years old was my Uncle Nick. So there were a lot of little ones. And I guess with my father being a huckster, he had a lot of food to come home and feed them with and everything. And Aunt Rosie, the oldest, they all worked in the factory. Aunt Annie was a button sewer. And the 3 of the older ones worked in the factory. And in the summertime, my grandmother, when she was still alive, but she was dying of the syphilis, used to go to the farm. And they would work there all summer, 6 days a week, like 14, 15 hours a day. And there was a blind horse. And so they would put all the food in the baskets from what they were picking, and then they would give the horse the direction to go to and hit its butt, and he would go, dump all the food and turn around, and the person over there would hit him, and he'd come right back. And he did that all day long, and he was blind. But if anybody has any questions, go ahead.
That's what I came to do. That's awesome. It is.
No, yeah, go ahead.
At the very beginning, you said about exchanging money with the priest.
Yes.
What's the story behind that?
Well, so the priest over here, the Italian priest, would know, like my great-grandfather probably went to him and said, hey, I want to get Raphael married. He's my first son. But I really would like for him to marry an Italian girl from Italy. So the priest here then gets in touch with the Italian priest in my grandmother's village. And they hook it up and money is exchanged. They're buying her, basically. Yeah, yeah.
I kind of like that idea.
How much money you got? Let's talk business. But
Today's generation, the generations today, are they, they're not,
Nah.
obviously they're not having that many kids, but I
No,
mean, are they still having big families?
no, like I do a lot of talks at Sons of Italy groups, and they hardly even go to the Son of Italy groups. Like the older people of my age are upset because their daughter and the grandchildren are no longer interested in any of it. And you know what I just heard recently too? That 27 million people here in America are not all Italian, but they have some kind of Italian in them. Like we are really a large population here, but they're not having the kids like, I mean, when I was a kid, I can remember many times thinking that my mother was nuts to have all of us because I was overwhelmed with having all those siblings. I can't imagine how she cooked our 3 meals every day and cleaned up. I mean, that's what her life was. That's
That's a full-time job.
that's even more than a full-time.
And laundry.
Yeah, and oh yeah, laundry every day. So who wants? I would never want to do that. And I don't think I'm an ass, but I got more to do than that. Right?
Right.
I remember the last time when your mother and your father were sitting here, weren't they asking me a lot about sex? Was it that? I'm telling you, they were, I believe it.
I'll have to go home and ask.
Yeah.
We got the video, so you know.
There you go. Thank you, Mark.
My parents never had sex. We had a stork that came.
What nationality are you? No, what nationality are you?
English.
English, is that how they did it?
I guess that's.
Wow.
The stork was a mom.
Yeah.
How many kids are in your family?
5 of us.
That's a pretty good amount, I think, too.
They had sex.
I just never picture them having sex. I don't know.
I never thought of how my mother and father did it.
It was the line under the dick.
But I will tell you, for my mother and my father, every Sunday was their day. They gave us an early dinner with our macaroni, and then we were put into 3 groups, 4, 4, and 4. And the oldest of each group got 40 cents, 10 cents each, a nickel to get in the movie and a nickel for a candy bar. And then they kicked us out. And then they went upstairs.
Ah.
Yep, every Sunday.
My mom used to say that. She
Yeah.
said used to go to the movies every Sunday.
Yeah, every
She said we
Sunday.
went to church,
Yep,
Germany,
yep.
8
Mhm.
movies.
Yeah. Now, I don't know how she was not tired. I mean, on Sunday, you get up and you make a big pot of gravy, and she made homemade pasta. So her macaroni was fresh. So she did all of that, fed all of us breakfast, threw us out to church, then had to deal with him, and then put us in our groups and send us out, and then have time for him. And upstairs in her bedroom would be one baby in a crib and another baby in a bassinet, because we're the last 4 or 18 months apart by breastfeeding. She would breastfeed, that was her birth control. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Were you ever in charge of one of the groups?
Nah, because I'm number 10.
Okay.
Yeah, no. No, my mother used to tell my 2 younger sisters, don't hang out with her, there's something wrong with her. I used to laugh, I'd go, thanks, I don't want them to come with me anyway. Yeah, when you think of the people back in that time, like my grandma, I'll be honest with you, and I did a lot of traveling in my day, and I'm from the 60s and the 70s, I did a lot of hitchhiking and stuff like that. And I know for myself in 1899, I never would have gotten on that big ship by myself to come across to marry some guy I've never seen. Do you know what I mean? To me, those women back then were very courageous, like really strong-willed females that knew what they were going to get into and were going to give it their all and do what they needed to do.
Why do you think she did it?
I think she had to listen to her mother and her father. And I think, yeah, the priest, yeah.
Let's not forget the power
Yeah,
of the priest.
well, he's the one who set it up, so yeah. In the beginning, she's mad at her parents, but as the time goes on, she starts to ease up. And then when they come for her, her father and the driver and her are going to go down into Naples, which is over a day with the donkey and the cart. She's starting to ease up, but then when she gets on the dock to get on the ship is when she starts to freak out again. Do you know what I mean? Because then she's getting on that ship, and who's she going to be with? And then, you know, they give you a time slot, like it could have been 10 days to 14 days, but I mean, it's a long time to be on a ship and not know anybody, except the one boy and the one guy that were from her village. And then I found out later that a lot of times a whole group from one village would go out at the same time, so they all knew each other. But on her ship, there was only 2.
Thank
What
God
was
there
he?
were those 2.
Huh?
Thank God there were those 2. Can you imagine her completely by herself?
Yeah, yeah.
So would you get the wife cheaper if there was like a bunch of them that came over at the same time?
Well, you know what? I never thought of it, but you would have. Probably so. Yeah.
Were there advantages to the parents for doing this? I mean, I'm not sure why they
Oh, I'm
do it.
sure that her father and mother got the money.
They got it, it was that,
She came across with $4.
wow.
You
So
know
they
what I
got that
mean?
much money, you think that it was worth it? Because I mean, I find it hard to think that you would just send your child over like that.
Oh, they did that a lot.
Mhm.
A lot. They really did. And then when
Sometimes I think they were thinking they were gonna have a better life.
oh, yeah, that's why he
they
sent her.
Like, you don't
Yeah,
live in this little village and raise chickens your whole life.
yeah.
Go. you know?
Yeah, and then I'm sure when the priest approaches you and he's saying, I'm saying $100, I don't know. I'm gonna give you $100. Back then, $100 was a lot of money. And he's probably thinking, oh, I could do a lot to my farm. And I still have Christina,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And then she comes over 18 years later, Christina. That's a long time. That Giltrude is over here all by herself. Of course, she married Raphael, but then think of when he came home and she found out that she was sick, when she went to the hospital to get the blood work. How did she feel? She has nobody, still nobody. They're all over in Italy, and she's here by herself. Even though she's married to Raphael and has children, I guess she put her heart into her children, you know?
Again, did she ever speak to her parents again, or
No.
was in touch with them?
No,
So they never visited America?
no, they never came.
So they never knew the story, what happened?
Oh, they knew.
They did find it.
She does write to Christina, and her and Christina were very close. They go back and forth. That's why when Christina did what she did in Chicago and got dumped, her next step was to come over here and be with Giltrude. Because Christina and Giltrude were very close. Yeah. And then when she came here, and that was in September, May, my great-grandmother takes her to John Wanamaker's to buy her gown. And she gets everything for Giltrude that Giltrude needs. And Giltrude does fall in love with Rosina. That's my great-grandmother, because Rosina takes very good care of her. I'm sure, like, when you think of when Aunt Christina came and how she got dumped, he just deserted her. He just needed, for some reason, to have a marriage certificate. I don't know what that was about. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it could have happened to Giltrude. It could happen, and it probably has happened to a lot of the females that came across. You know? Why?
Did she get divorced?
Who, Christina?
Christina.
No, he deserted her. So yeah, I have a copy of the divorce paper from the City Hall of Chicago. Yeah, she divorced him, and the reason was desertion. Yeah,
She didn't need him, because he deserved.
her. So then when she came to Philadelphia is when she married Antonio. But she never had any children of her own. Yeah. But she did help Giltrude when they were sick. She would go over all the time and wash Giltrude, and she didn't want to touch Raphael. She did not like Raphael. She probably would like to have killed Raphael. Do you know what I mean?
Did Raphael's parents help, and were they involved in this?
In the beginning, oh yeah, I believe they had money, because they had a house that they paid for in cash. They paid for her to come here.
Right.
They got her a wedding dress at John Wanamaker's,
Yeah,
and they took care of her.
so they did, so she would have had maybe her mother-in-law?
Oh, her mother-in-law and her were very close.
Okay.
When Rosina died, Giltrude was heartbroken.
Okay,
Yeah. And her father-in-law helped her too. They
Okay.
both loved her and she loved them.
Okay.
They were good to her.
okay, so
Yeah.
that was good.
Yeah. Anything else?
I'm from a big Italian family, my mother and my father. My mother was Sicilian.
Yeah.
Big time. I never heard the name Giltrude.
Oh.
Never.
Yeah.
So when we were staying on the Amalfi Coast. So when they told us, when we saw it in the book, well, first of all, we go to her town. It's a little village, and it's a big building. It's called the Community Center. We go in there, and our driver is Italian, and he starts talking to the guy in Italian, and the guy says, wait, and he goes in the back room, and he comes out, and he's got a pair of white gloves on with a book about that long and about that wide, and it was brown leather. And he puts it down, and he just flops it open, and it's going back to Giltrude, 1881. And I said, I'm not touching that book, you know, my hands, the grease. And he said, here's a pencil, go down the line and see if you can see her name. Well, so I'm looking for Carmela DeLullo. And then I see Giltrude DeLullo, Giltrude Carmela DeLullo. Her first name really was Giltrude. So when I go back to the Amalfi Coast and I go to the hotel, I go to the concierge and I said, hey, do me a favor. Look on your computer and tell me, Giltrude a German name? And he looks it up, it's a German name. So last week, a woman who's in one of my Italian groups said, my grandmother, who was born in 1880, her name was Giltrude also. So maybe at that time it was I never heard of it before, but you know how like there's a popular name at a given?
Yes.
I'm wondering if that was just a popular name at that time, because that's German.
Unless the Germans had, some Germans settled in Italy maybe
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. I thought it was really weird when I saw the name Giltrude.
Yeah.
And her middle name's Carmela, so as you go through the book, you'll see that She doesn't want you to call her Giltrude because she doesn't like it. She likes the name Carmela.
Yeah, Carmel is very common in
Yeah,
Attendees.
it is. I have a sister. And Trudy, which is, they're saying Giltrude, there's like 4 or 5 Trudys in our family from all the aunts and uncles naming their kids Trudy, thinking that that's what their mother's name was, but it was really Giltrude. But Trudy's okay. You know what I mean? But yeah. And we're all given names. All of us are named after the aunts. Like back in the day, like when my father was born, he was named Michael because he was named after his father's father. My first aunt, Aunt Rosie, was named after his mother, great Aunt Rosina, which is my great grandmother. So it's all done by name, and that's how you pay the respect. But I don't know if they still do that today. Like Michelle, I always thought your mother named you after my father, Michael.
That's what she said.
That's what I think too. And then she named your brother Carmen after his father. And that's the way us Italians did it back then. But I don't know if they still do it like that. Or if it's a thing where just when everybody comes across, maybe for the first generation, that's how they do their names in the family. I don't know.
My sister-in-law is from Italy. She didn't come over here till she was like 12.
Uh-huh.
And all her nieces are either Angel, after Angeline, and the nephews are Michael, after Mike. They all have the same name.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that's the way they did it.
Mhm.
You named it after somebody. That was an honor, I guess.
It is an
Yeah.
honor. Yeah, yeah. What is there, two Michaels?
Yeah.
Michael Pasquarello and the other Michael Pasquarello? What did you want to know?
This is off the topic, but since the last time you were here, I didn't get to ask this question last time. 2-part question.
Yeah.
Anybody, you or anybody in your family involved with the mummers down in Philly?
No. Well, can I explain something to you? You have to remember, when we were little, there were no female mummers. You know that, right? Okay. But no, none of them were. And can I also explain something else about the mummers? The mummers did not allow the Italians in there until after World War II. They allowed every other nationality but the Italians.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Second part, how about the Gator with the heater? Any
I
connection?
can't stand him.
She thinks he's Italian.
He's half Italian, half Jewish.
Jewish,
Yeah.
That doesn't count.
Who were you talking about?
The Gator with the heater?
Jerry Blabber.
Jerry Blabber.
She's too young.
Yeah, she is too young.
Is she too young?
Yeah, she's too young. Really, you're too young.
How old is he? He's gotta be about 85 or something,
least.
isn't
He
he?
still entertains you too.
Oh, yes, he still goes to those clubs and everything.
What's that
Yeah, Gator with the heater.
Oh, yeah, no.
You don't know what
I'm
it
not
is?
from that area, that's why.
He goes
She's
to
too
that,
young, too.
she's too
And
young.
I'm not from this area, we're not from this
Oh,
area.
all right.
so
Well,
that's-
this is now, he's originally from South Philly, but he does like the nightclubs in Delaware County and stuff
He
like
was a
that.
radio disc jockey
Yeah.
when we were growing up.
Yeah.
And he had WHH.
I can't
Yeah.
remember.
I think it was WHH.
I can't remember. And he does one of the couple of the joints down in Jersey
Yeah,
in the
like
summertime.
Hargate. He used to do a Hargate a lot.
Yeah. They
Well,
still
my
do.
friend Linda still lives in South Philly, so Linda that used to live down the street from me at the field,
Yeah.
between our houses,
Does she like South Philly?
she loves it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was down there last week to do a thing at the Passion Community Center.
Mhm.
I couldn't believe, now listen, I'm from the inner city, but I could not believe the people out at 9 o'clock at night walking through those streets. I said, what the hell am I doing here? And it's pouring rain, I don't know where I am, I'm trying to find my car. And they're walking around like it's nothing, honestly. But you know what, I think if I was probably still living there, it'd probably be normal to me, to be out there walking around. I guess because I live like in Kennett Square, which is kind of isolated. If I walk out the door, I'm gonna see a fox or a deer. I can deal with that.
From South Philly to Kennett Square?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a big jump.
Because it's a culture shock for you when you first moved out there? or
No,
what?
you know what it is? I can mix it in anywhere. I used to live in Arizona, across the street from the horse farm, and the tumbleweeds used to come in my front yard. Yeah. No, I think you have to get accustomed to wherever you live. I mean, look what they did. They all came from another country into a little house in South Philly. And in our house, where it was 14 of us, we had a bathtub and a toilet. And anybody who wanted to use that bathroom, you had to walk through the middle bedroom, which was us 6 girls in there. So that meant the 4 boys in that room had to come out of the hallway and walk through our bedroom to get to the toilet. Now that's a weird way of living. I think I would have put a bucket in their room. Don't go through that room. Yeah, yeah.
Who came to Philly first? I was surprised they just didn't stay up in New York area, coming into Ellis Island. There had to be somebody in Philly that they were.
Oh, well, no, but on one of the census, there's a Antonio Pasquarello in our family plot, and none of us know who he is, and then I found a census.
Yeah.
Antonio Pasquarello, he's a little kid that died,
Right.
5 years old. Across the street, there was Antonio Pasquarello. Antonio Pasquarello and Raphael Pasquarello were the best of buddies. They were family, but they were like brothers. So when his son died, he asked my grandfather, can I bury him in your plot? They probably didn't have a plot, and he let him bury him there. Yeah. Yeah, there were a bunch of names on the family plot. You know, I went into the cemetery one day, and there was this Irish boy working there, and I said, Jim, you gotta help me, I'm an old lady, and I need to get this information from you. I said, I need to see the book from 1900. He said, you sit here, I'm gonna go get it. And he went and he got it. And it was all beat up looking. But there it was. When my grandfather bought the family plot, where it was, and all the names of all the people in there, and then I started to look through the census and all the information, then I started to figure out we're all family in that plot. But before, nobody knew who they were. My Aunt Mary had told me that she knew it was family, but she just didn't. I think a lot of times the aunts and uncles lie to us too. They don't tell us the truth. Because I think
Keepers of the family secrets.
yeah, and I like the family. I want to hear that shit. You know, I want to know it all. Good, bad, and the ugly. That's how we became who we are. I'm not ashamed of it at all. I thoroughly enjoy it. Like when my mother used to tell us all her stories about my father's family because my father was gone. He had died. So my mother wanted us to know who they were. And she would tell us like she could be sitting there drinking her cup of tea and having a tasty cake and going, yeah, your grandparents died of syphilis. So like it was, they just ate a banana. And in the beginning when she first said it, some of us girls that we were really young, we went into the living room and we said, what is syphilis? You know, we had no clue. And then the older siblings told us. And every once in a while, my mother would come up with it. Yeah, they had syphilis, and that's what happened. And then we knew that they laid in bed, they became paralyzed. We knew exactly what that disease did to you. Because then, I think it was 1942 when they finally came up with the antibiotic. I can't even imagine. I went back into the history part, like when they put you in a mental ward, they would check you to see if you had syphilis or not, because a lot of them did have syphilis. They just didn't have the physical signs of it, but they were absolutely gone in their head. Do you know what I mean? And then when you read like how they died and all the awful things that can happen, it's like really a weird thing. You think everybody would have stopped having sex? To know that you could have gotten that. I mean, and listen, that goes back thousands, hundreds of years ago. It didn't just come up in 1889, you know what I mean? So it's amazing. You're looking at me like I'm nuts.
No, I'm just fascinated listening.
It is something, isn't it? Seriously?
Any references to the flu pandemic in your background?
In the 1918?
The 19, yeah.
Yeah, I do a little bit of that in there, and that's another thing I want to tell you about. 1918 in the city of Philadelphia, you know how many days that school was closed in the city? 10 days, and then went right back to school. And I have pictures where you see the death wagon with the horse out there taking the bodies out and stuff like that. But I think we lost a heck of a lot more people at this than we did in 1918. And we were dirtier back then, like we didn't think about washing our hands as often or when I was a little girl, we got a bath on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
And me and my sister Carmela got a bath together. So we saved water. Water was very expensive for 14 people. Mm-hmm. So you think back then, I mean, you look at some of those pictures and you could see like the people are dressed, but they're really, really dirty looking. It's because they probably haven't bathed in a couple of weeks, or maybe even longer, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Would you like to know anything else?
So did your whole family leave South Philly then? Like
Well, when my father died, we moved out. We were kind of pushed out, so we went to Southwest Philly. But my oldest brother Ralph, when he got married 6 months later, he went right back there and bought a house. And he just recently passed away, but he lived down there for 60-some years. Yeah, he was the only one, and his boys, he still has one boy living down there. So that's about it, to be honest with you. And the housing down there is really, really, really expensive. When he sold his house about 10 years ago, he sold a little house for like $335,000. And those houses, all property down there is really expensive.
Even more so now, probably.
Yeah, yeah. But I still go down to South Philly. I still like to go to 9th Street, and I love to go to Terminies, so I still do those things.
And the Brunos.
Well, I don't like the Brunos since they did what they did during the pandemic. Do you remember what they did?
No, I don't know
Okay.
what they did.
So De Bruno's, do any of you know about De Bruno's? De Bruno's is a big cheese and meat place, and they have quite a few stores. They have one on, I believe, it's across the street from Jefferson, so that's 9th and Chestnut, Michelle?
Yeah, no.
Okay, so during the pandemic, when everybody was going down there and busting out the windows and stealing all the goods and everything, they left a sign out on the street that they offered the police a cup of coffee and a sandwich. So when the bad guys seen that, they blasted it all over Facebook that don't go to De Bruno's no more because they're offering the pigs a sandwich and coffee. And so that was the end of that. They no longer want the police in their stores at all. So I don't patronize them anymore.
I didn't know that's.
Yeah, yeah.
They have good stuff.
Oh, they have wonderful stuff. Yeah, yeah. I had a tea party and I went down there and bought a bunch of stuff. Their lunch meat and their cheeses. It was a gelata sandwich. That gelata said how to make it, and I don't eat meat, but everybody I served with it, they said it was superb. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but South Philly, I wouldn't want to live down there. I couldn't take it.
Can't find a place to park.
Yeah, well, with the place I went to last week, I said to the guy who runs the community center, where am I parking? Because I can't find anything, right? He said, you're gonna park in Maria Goretti's parking lot. He said, because their property joins ours and they won't tell you. And I did, I parked in there. Yeah, Maria Goretti's is a really big school. I mean, that school's been there for years. Well, the Italian girls used to go to that. And then, to get back to my story of my father, when my father's parents died and then he raised his siblings, he then meets my mother. And he meets my mother in 1932. And she was a virgin. She was 26. And they're on the trolley after dating for 3 months. He leans in to kiss her. And she's never been kissed before. So she tells him, you want to kiss me? He said, yeah. She said, you're going to have to marry me. They went to City Hall and he married her. 9 months later, they had Ralph, the first one. Yep. Yeah.
That's a true story.
Yeah, that is a true
Say it all the
story.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. He fell for it.
It's your
That's cute.
Yeah. She loved him to pieces.
How old was her husband? I mean,
My mother was 25 and almost 26, and my father was 31. Yeah. But you got to remember, my father was busy out on the streets running around having a good time until he met her. You know how he met her? My mother was working in the factory down on Market Street. And so the girls would take turns on who was going to go get the lunch for the girls at the factory. So my mother one day was walking by and she sees this guy with a push cart. And she fancies him. And so every day they would say, who wants to go get the lunch? And I'll go. And they were catching on that she was after this guy. So she would come back every day with the lunches and they would say, did you see Frankenstein today?
Oh, he's tall.
Yeah, it worked. He fell for it.
Good for her.
Yeah, I don't think he ever was going to get married and have 12 kids in his own head. Do you know what I mean? I don't think he ever thought that in a million years, you know? I guess being 31 back then, wouldn't that be considered kind of old?
Yeah.
And her too, almost 26. So she goes home and says, this Michael Pasquarello wants to marry me. And he said, you're not marrying him. And she said, Dad, I'm in love with him and he loves me. He said, you're not marrying him. She had to run away to City Hall. And he didn't speak to her for about 3 months. She could see him on the street and he wouldn't acknowledge her. And then finally he caved in. Because back in those days, your parents had to say, yeah, you can marry.
Why did he want her to marry him?
Because she was working and she was helping paying the bills and they were living together, do you know what I mean? So he had it much easier with she being at the house and taking, and she cooked and she cleaned.
Oh, okay.
Now he wasn't gonna have any of that, you know? But she did her thing. She ran away. So when she would tell us that we shouldn't go out with this one or that one, we would say, but you married Frankenstein. Yeah.
What were some of the other nicknames in the family?
And we all had nicknames. I was Olive Oil looking for Popeye. Antoinette was Broken Arrow because she fell on the steps and broke the 2 front teeth. Georgie was Morris Code because he stuttered. We all had, like if you heard someone calling Olive Oil, I knew it was me, that somebody wanted me. Yeah, yeah. Or they would call me flat-chested. They said I was flat like an awning board. That's what happens when you have 4 rotten older brothers. Yeah. We all had nicknames. Did you have a nickname?
Just like, no, yeah. So, yeah.
Carmela was bucket mouth because she never shut up. If she came in and said, Mom, I want to go to the dance Friday night, my mother said no, whatever the reason was, you're not going. Carmela would stand there and fight with her. I used to say, shut up, let's just go. If she catches us, we get killed. She couldn't catch her, she had 10 others to look at. No, Carmela would stand there and fight. So the boys named her bucket mouth. Or mop head, because she had a head of hair. And they used to say, sometimes they would take her and flip her. It was fun coming from a family of 12. It really was. Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And if you were smart, you can con my mother out of anything.
Any questions, comments from the folks on Zoom? Feel free to unmute.
I don't see anybody.
They're there. They just have their video turned
Can you
on.
hear Mark? Do you have any questions? I talked into that thing.
Yeah. Yep, somebody's coming on.
Oh,
My wife.
yeah.
Hi.
Mrs. P.
Maybe she doesn't hear us?
She does.
Does she hear us?
Yeah.
I can hear you just fine.
Oh, do you have any questions?
No, but you were driving me crazy flipping your pages there. You're 2 inches from the microphone.
Oh, Jesus,
And I
I'm
kept hearing
sorry.
Bang, bang, bang.
That's me. I'm very nervous, so I'll put this over here so I can
Thank you. It was just very noisy.
So you should have said something. I would have moved it out of the way.
I tried to earlier, but other people were talking, so I guess you didn't hear me.
So you don't have not one question for me?
No, I did miss some of it because of that, but
Oh, I'm sorry. Mark, this is your wife, correct?
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Oh.
But yeah, it's very interesting talk.
Oh, thank you. That's nice of you to say.
How long have
Anybody
you-
else?
How long have you been in Kennett Square?
22 years. Yeah. It is. Yeah.
It's nice down that way.
Yeah, it is.
Are you around any of the mushroom soil plants? The smell?
I try to stay away from them wicked things. If that wind shifts, you're dead. Seriously. It's horrible. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of those in Kennett Square. The mushroom capital of the world.
Of course.
Really, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Do you go to Longwood Gardens much?
I've only been there once. I'm asthmatic, so those flowers and plants don't do anything for me. Do you know what I mean? I can't breathe as it is. But we did go. I did want to check it out. But I would really like to check it out since they have redone it, because that looks gorgeous. You know? Yeah. Have you?
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually danced the ballet there.
You can ballet?
Way back, way back.
For real? You went to school for it?
It was one of the situations that one of the schools, ballet schools always need boys, so I got to
Yeah.
take classes for free, and I was an actor at the time. I'm not gonna pass that up, so.
What, you wore the tights?
Oh, yeah.
You got
I'm
them
very
on
proud
now?
of it. I have no shame at all about that. One of the best things in my life, ever. We did it in the outdoor theater. The
Yeah.
outdoor fountain theater. It was
Oh, that's
beautiful. It was
Yeah.
awesome.
When'd you do that?
This is in the 90s,
Oh,
way back.
when you were a young boy.
Not really.
Do you still ballet?
Actually, I just turned 60 in August, and I bought myself three dance classes. One of them's ballet. I'm back into it.
That's wonderful.
I know.
Oh, you'll enjoy that, I think.
It does wonders for my legs. I'll tell you that much.
Isn't it weird as we get older, we go back to the things, do you know what I mean?
I wish I never left it.
Yeah, I got you. But then there's also, as you get older, there's new things you pick up. You know what I mean? What's the new thing?
No?
Yeah,
Can I get back to you on that?
okay. Tap dance?
That's one of my three, yeah.
Yeah?
That's my favorite, Hoofing, definitely.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
My sister Carmela was a tap dancer.
What was her nickname? Was that Bucket Mouth?
That's Bucket Man, Mom Head. Yeah,
BN for short.
yeah. Thank God she's not here to meet, she wouldn't care. She would laugh at you. Isn't it funny, we all knew our nicknames? You know?
So are you saying you're gonna write another book?
Yeah, this one is a little bit different from what I've been writing, yeah.
Have you started it?
It's all in my head so far. I have it all done, except the reverie, and I don't know yet how to end that. So until I know how to end it, I won't start writing it, because you could flip it if you want, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not for sure yet. But this one is a true murder mystery.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's true.
Yeah, it's true,
Okay.
yeah.
It's not about your dad, is it?
No, no, that's not a murder mystery. My father.
Well then,
Thought it
you
was.
know how it ends.
Oh, my father, you mean?
No, the murder mystery.
Yeah, but because I do know the people and everything,
Yeah.
I have to be really careful, like, of how I put it down.
Yeah, of
Do you know what I
course,
mean?
Of course, yeah, yeah.
I don't need to get sued.
No, that
You know what I
would
mean?
be good.
Even though I don't think there's any way the family will know, I still think that, what are the odds? I don't know. The odds could be against me,
Mhm.
right?
Well, good luck with that project.
Oh, thank you.
Seriously.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, I look forward to it. Like, every night I go to sleep about where I am and how I'm moving it forward. And I wake up in the middle of the night and I go, should I go down and start writing? And I go, no, go back to sleep because you won't have it together yet. You know? That's what it is about writing. You live in all these freaking stories. You know? It's really quite fun though. Yeah.
That's risky, though, writing about the Italians from South Philly. You're saying about getting sued, we're about getting a contract put out on it.
Hey, who said it was an Italian from South Philly? Well, my father was from South Philly, right?
Yeah. And?
And they killed him down there.
That's what I'm talking about.
But it's not about my father.
Yeah. I'm saying with South Philly with the mob scene. Never mind.
Oh, I understand what you're saying. And that's why we left. Well, that's why they put us out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Told you to leave.
Mhm.
Really?
Mhm. Yeah. And then what's a mother going to do with 12 kids being down there? You know what I mean? And then what does she do? She moves it from the Italian neighborhood to an Irish neighborhood. Because she think they would never figure it out. You know what I mean? The way the Italians live.
Once you start to write this book, about how long does it take you till it's completed.
Okay, so this is the deal. So let's say I write a chapter tonight, because I know where I'm going with
Right.
it. I could look at that chapter for the next 2 weeks and rewrite and rewrite. Sometimes I write a story, I go, damn, that's great, I'm not touching that thing, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So my first book, because I had no clue what I was doing, but I had a lot of stories, that took me about 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, because I kept rewriting, and then I played head games. Am I going to tell them the truth, or things that I really know, or am I going to lie? And then if I lie, how am I going to cover up that lie? So it took a lot of work in here to get it all down in paper and be honest and truthful about it. And then the second book, I worked on that really fast, and that one took me maybe 2 years, if it took 2 years. But besides doing that, my husband owns businesses. I go with him on trade shows. I cook, I clean. So sometimes I can work on a book straight for 2 weeks, and then sometimes I won't touch it for a month. And then sometimes I start writing stories and I throw them in the trash, or I'll put them in a pile, maybe. Do you know what I mean? So it's a lot of work, but it's fun work, for me anyway. And then I hear people, they do their own little outline, and that's how they write all the time. They follow this outline, and they get it done real quick. I'm not an outline girl. I just go with what's going on in here. I probably could get a lot more done if I did outline
Right.
that. Do you write?
Not
Oh.
really, not really.
No, I was just
But I
wondering.
was just interested in the writing process,
Mhm.
and, because I know how it is for me if I'm just writing. You just have to write a simple little narrative and nothing like that.
Uh-huh.
How long it can take you.
Oh, yeah.
Because you keep going back and you look at the words and then you go, no.
Yeah,
And a
yeah.
lot of times what you're thinking doesn't get conveyed into your writing.
Or sometimes you'll find that you're repeating the same stupid
Mhm.
word over and over, and you go, what the hell's wrong with me? So what I do, I got Google right there, I'll put that word in Google, and Google will come up with 50 other words just like it. So
Yeah.
that really helps me a lot. I play a lot with Google. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And you can really find out a lot, even like you said, just with writing something small.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the problem though, is that you read it and you go, I could fix that, make it sound better, and then you think that again.
Because sometimes we're our harshest critics.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, I agree 100% with that. Yeah. I pass it to my husband, and then I have a really close girlfriend, Karen, and I give it to her. And then she tells me what she really thinks. And that's great, because that's, like, my husband will say great, but he's full of shit, and I know it. Do you know what I mean? And he's only saying it to stroke me. I want Karen to tell me what she really thinks,
Right.
and she tells me. And then there's some stories, like I'll do free stories, like there's a Rohan magazine in Philadelphia, I'll write stories and send it to them, and a lot of times they publish them. And sometimes I look at them and I go, I wrote that story 6 months ago, I don't remember that. It's really weird,
Mm-hmm.
because your mind's always moving with it. Yeah, it's fun.
How do you decide which goes in the trash and what goes in the maybe pile?
The one that goes in the trash, as soon as I read it, if I go, oh, that is horrible, I hit it right then. I don't wait and go, oh, that's gonna be better tomorrow. I can just tell from my first reading, to me, if it sounds good. Yeah.
Did you have any special training to begin as a writer?
No, not at all. There's a writer, his name is Friedman, and Friedman also does self-help books, or he'll do group things. He does all of this, and he has written maybe 50 books. And he was really poor in writing, really poor in English, and really poor in spelling. It's the thing to everyone, because I bought a CD, just to hear what this guy had to say. And he said, just write a story, finish it, and go back over it, and go through everything. He said, you will have so many mistakes on your grammar, your English, and your spelling. And it's the truth. Sometimes I'm reading something, I go, what is that word that I wrote? Do you know what I mean?
You wrote it.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'll keep working at it.
Do you write with cursive or do you?
Oh, yeah, I write in
Or do you use
cursive.
the
I write-
computer?
No, I do in cursive. My first book was 106,000 words, and this book is 103, and everything's in cursive. Yeah. And sometimes my right hand and wrist kills me, and I say, okay, calm down, and we'll see if you can do it tomorrow. Yeah, I don't want to do computer. I like cursive. I really do. And I think it's easier for someone to read too, because I'll pass it on to Karen, or I'll bring in, my husband has a marketing girl, Amanda, and she's a sweetheart, and I'll bring a story into her, and I'll say, Amanda, just clean it up and type it out. And she does that, and then I'll send it out to different magazines. It's amazing how many magazines or newspapers take them and run them. It's pretty neat. Now, I hear people make a living by doing that. I never made any money by doing it. They say you can make a living from doing that, stories and everything. Mhm. And you write in cursive all the time?
It depends. I don't really write.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying, I was just curious how you did it.
No, even like my notes for the market, everything's in cursive. Like, I can't print, like, if I had to print lettuce, that would take me so long as opposed to writing that in cursive. But from what I was told last week, cursive is now being taught back into the schools, which is nice, because they stopped it for a while. Yeah. And I remember when I was a kid, I was in most places Sacrament, we had to do 45 minutes every Friday of cursive. Yeah.
And the practice. with
Oh,
the
yeah,
circles,
remember that?
all
Yeah. And they had it on the board.
Yes.
Capital A, little A.
Mhm.
I used to write really good too. I was great with that. Not now, I'm kind of sloppy. But then they also were grading us too. I always got an A in that. That was about the only A I got.
You ever get in any trouble with anything you wrote?
No. No. I don't think I would. But then again, you don't know how people are. You don't know how somebody can read something and be offended by it or something, and it really doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Especially in this day and age.
Yeah, this day and age are pretty nuts, don't you think? Yeah. No matter what you say or do, they're coming after you. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, just that, for instance, when you look at the Italian groups, and I guess I know all of this because I deal with them all the time, how they want to take down Christopher Columbus. Come on, can you prove that Christopher Columbus really killed all these Indians? I understand that's what you think, but give me proof. If you're going to accuse someone of being that cruel, or when they were taking all the statues down of they were trying to take Lincoln's statue down in Washington. Do they know that he freed the slaves? I mean, come on, use your head. Find out what all these statues are about before you tear them down. And that's our history anyway. Be it good or bad, it's our history.
Even if you take it down, you're not changing what happened.
No, you're not. And I think everyone should know about it.
Mhm.
Leave it up to the individuals. It's okay if you don't like it. It's okay. There's a lot of things I don't like, but I still go and check them out. How are you going to learn and grow and become better if you don't look at all those things and try to deal with it? But when they were trying to take Lincoln's statue down, I was cracking up. I said to my husband, look at these whiffs. They don't even know what they're doing. They don't have a clue.
They're woke.
Yeah, they're woke. Is it our generation that realize that?
They don't.
No? Okay. Okay.
All right, well, we need to wrap up as the library's closing in less than 10 minutes.
Well, thank you,
Please
everyone,
check
for
out,
coming.
thank you, Josephine.